Hey guys, it's me. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel and this is your first time hearing about me, my name is Nefertiti. I am a full-time entrepreneur and I am a wedding photographer. I've been a wedding photographer since 2015. And then I recently became a studio owner in 2020 during the pandemic, and everything was on lockdown, so it was quite a gamble for me to open up my business. I am a studio owner of 5 different multi-studios, I guess. I have 5,500 square feet of studio space, and I'm loving being a studio owner and a photographer. And I don't normally drink coffee. It's actually a mocha. Today I had wanted to chat about a few things. What I'm currently shooting with right now, and give you guys some suggestions if you're just new to the photography community, or maybe you feel a little bit shy about the gear that you have. I'm here to tell you that you don't have to have the latest and greatest. I just wanted to give you some tips on what I would recommend depending on where the journey that you're in. So I'm going to start off by sharing what I shoot with currently. This is my current main body. It is a Canon R6. I have always been a Canon user. My very first camera that I had, actually, we're gonna back up. When I was going to photography school, to be honest, I didn't even have a camera. I didn't even buy a DSLR. I'm pretty sure I still had like my very first point and shoot, which I got for maybe my 18th birthday. It wasn't anything special, but it was definitely not a DSLR where I could manually go and change my settings or have full creative control of my camera. So the school was very gracious enough to lend me one of their camera bodies, and I had a few months to, save a little bit of money. I decided to get a semi-pro camera, and it was the Canon 6D. It was a great camera. At the time, the 5D Mark III had just came out. I couldn't afford the 5D Mark III, so I stuck with the 6D because it was still full frame. It had some great megapixels. The only issue that I had with that camera is that it only had one card slot. So we're gonna talk about this a little bit later. After I had the 6D, I shot with that for some time, and then as I got into wedding photography, I did end up getting a second camera body, which I do recommend. And before your heart sinks and drops and you think, oh my gosh, I thought she just said that I didn't have the latest and greatest and I didn't have to go and upgrade to all this stuff. Just wait. I promise I have good things to say your way for those of you who cannot quite afford a second body. I promise. Hang in there. So I started shooting with the 5D Mark III, and I had my Canon 6D as a backup camera. And then I don't quite remember when, I think it was a few years later, that I ended up selling my my 6D, and I ended up getting the 5D Mark IV and kept the 5D Mark III as a backup camera. So recently, less than 6 months, I just bought the Canon R6. It is a mirrorless camera, and I guess I was at a crossroad, and I'm the type of person that I hate change. And I was like, when is the next DSLR coming? I will never switch to mirrorless just because I don't like trying new things, but I really need to get over that. Yeah, I guess I just realized that this would be the right time to go and upgrade. So I took the plunge, traded in my 5D Mark IV for the R6. Moving on to other gear that I have. So I still have my backup camera, which is the 5D Mark III, and eventually I am going to either get another Canon R6 or the R5. The jury's still out on that, depending on how finances look. And as for lenses, my favorite focal length is the 50mm. So this here is the L series 50mm 1.2. It's a fabulous lens. If I could only shoot a wedding with one lens, this would be the lens. I mainly shoot primes, and that's what I kind of started my career in. So the next focal length that I have is the 35mm, and this is the only lens in my lineup that is a Sigma. Usually I like to stick within the native lenses, use only Canon just because, I don't know, I guess I prefer like the colorings of the Canon and everything. But after doing a lot of research, I had realized that the 35mm art lens was a lot sharper than the Canon version, and it was also, I like this price point a lot better. So I have that one. And then my telephoto option is the Canon 135mm, which this is also my baby. I just love it because it gives me an 85mm look as well. So yeah, I've got the 135 that I use for during a ceremony, basically. 35mm I also use for all of the getting ready photos. I actually really like this for flat lays as well. And ring shots, all of that, I actually prefer the 35 for that. And then during the wedding ceremony, I kind of have my 135 and my 50mm on, and I like getting the shallower depths of field. I do like to shoot wide open, although I don't always shoot wide open during the ceremony. Oh wait, I did forget about one more lens. So I only use this 24-70 during the ceremony portion. But I like kind of staying near the front of the grand entrance so that I can get the groom's reaction right away, and then I can get the bride walking in. I like that I can kind of start off telephoto and then go wide to get kind of like the crowd reaction and all those kind of shots. So yeah, during the ceremony, it's not that I want to say that those are more boring shots, but they're just the more generic shots that you have to get, and you have to have like wide shots, you have to have tight shots, you know, all of like exchanging of the rings. I use the 135, but that's what I use this guy for, and then basically all of my family portraits. And then once I'm done with family portraits, I stick the 50mm back on, and that's all I shoot with for the couple is the 50mm and the 135, and then sometimes the 35mm, depending on situations and all of that. But yeah, I'm more of a telephoto kind of gal. What I wanted to chat about was kind of going back to the beginning of the conversation when I had mentioned what do you do if you're new to the photography industry and you don't have $3,000 or more to go and spend on lenses or a body, and maybe you just have a crop frame like a Rebel or a T3. I don't even know what they have for the crop frames anymore. But what do you do if you have that? Or maybe you're like me and you have like a 6D or the Mark II 6D. Sorry, like I said, I'm not a tech person. Once I buy my gear, I kind of just stick with my stuff, so I don't really know what Canon actually has. If I recall, their 6D still only has one card slot, or maybe even the R. Like the R is also another new mirrorless, but it has one card slot. So here's my suggestion. Do not shoot a wedding on a 128 or 64 gig. You're gonna wanna get smaller gigabyte cards, like a 32 gig or even smaller. The reason being why you wanna do this is because cards fail all the time. I've had it happen. And you don't want to shoot an entire wedding on one or two cards, have a card fail, and then have that conversation with your client. That is going to give you a very bad reputation very quickly, and I don't want that for you. So I would recommend, hey, if you're just starting out and you can't quite upgrade to a camera that has a dual card slot, just shoot with smaller SD cards. So that's like tip number one. Tip number two is if you are kind of in limbo of wanting to upgrade your camera, or you need to get like a backup camera, you should find your local camera store. For me, I have a really good relationship with Photo Central. Shout out to Photo Central here in Winnipeg. They're a small family business and they have excellent service. and they rent out a lot of their gear, some of their gear, like the basic stuff, like your basic 28 to 70 or your 70 to 200. And then they have a few different cameras. I believe the 5D Mark IV is one of them that they're still renting out, and the Canon R6. Now, this is going to be still a little bit of an investment. Usually cameras, at least in Winnipeg, they're about $250 to rent out for a weekend. This gives you a great opportunity to, number one, try out the camera before the wedding. You don't want to be playing with whole new gear that you don't know how to use on the day of. That's going to be too stressful. But you can rent it out, play with it, see how you like it. And that's a great way of not investing thousands of dollars up front. You can build this charge into your wedding price for your client. You can write off that full charge. You can write off that full payment that you make to rent out a camera. Now, where I live, particularly in Canada, during tax time, even when I buy a camera, if my camera is worth more than $500, I can't write off that full purchase in 1 year. There is a depreciation value each year. I can only write off up to $500. So if the gear is under $500, you can write that off as a full cost of your business. So if you're new to all this and you have either a crop frame or you, like I mentioned, you have, a semi-pro camera, you could find a local camera store that would rent you out the gear, and you can build that into your price. And then that way you kind of get a little bit experience with that gear. You get to see if you actually want to have it. That would be my suggestion. Now is a great time to go and buy a bunch of EOS lenses. They still shoot great, and I have been seeing like some of my dream lenses for crazy low prices, because a lot of people are starting to get the mirrorless bodies and the mirrorless lenses. Like a 5D Mark III, that is still a great camera to buy. A 5D Mark IV, that is still a great camera to buy. And you can easily find these cameras on Kijiji, or there's different camera stores out there that you can find some of these used for like $1,000 or $800. And yes, maybe you can buy a crop frame for $800 brand new, but you are still gonna get better megapixels with even though it's an older camera. You're gonna be able to have like different focal points. It'll be like more, I guess, advanced, and you're gonna have that dual card reader, which is gonna be excellent because then you can back up your SD cards while you're shooting. So for an example, when I shoot a wedding, this double card slot, I put 2 memory cards in there, and I make sure that they are being backed up to one another so that if a card failure happens with one of the cards, it's still backed up on the other one. And that's just like a great security blanket to have. So I don't know if that was quite helpful or not, but that's what I have in my bag. And like I said, honestly, like you can still take photos with some gear that is not quite the newest and the latest and greatest. My opinion anyway. So now that I've been doing this for 7 going on 8 years, and I do this as full time, I charge quite differently now than I did back when I had the semi-pro gear. And I think that those are some like things to think about. Sometimes people ask me, how should I like price myself? When do I know to go and upgrade my prices? Just because you go and buy all this brand new gear, yes, you're gonna wanna make a return on that investment, but some things to go and also think about is your experience that you have, your education that you have. Not necessarily that you need to have a degree or diploma in photography like I do, but I mean even getting some like workshops or like night courses, anything that you have education or experience in is gonna help you be a better photographer. What I like to go and compare it to is going to the gym. So, you're not going to see that difference going to the gym on day 1, 2, 3, or even in a week, but 6 months, if you're going to the gym diligently, you're gonna start seeing results. I saw this very evidently when I was in photography school because I was shooting all the time. We had projects and homework all the time. I was shooting. I believe that at the end of the year, keep in mind, I didn't have a camera for 3 months, but when I went and looked at my shutter count on my 6D, I had about 60,000 photos that I had taken. Like, I guess, how many months would that have been? I guess if the program was 7 months. 7 months having my camera, I took 60,000 photos, which is an insane amount. But anyway, I did gain so much experience, and my first photo on that camera looked completely different than the photos that I took 60,000 photos later. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to go to a professional school. There's so many photographers that I know within my community that, you know, they are full-time photographers and they don't have any education, but they do know how to work around a camera. They do know a lot of those things like shooting in RAW versus JPEG, how to shoot manual, and, you know, how to keep things in focus. So basically, yeah, that's my experience, and I guess my recommendation to you if you're first starting. If you're new to my channel, just know that like I'm gonna be giving some tidbits along the way of like RAW versus JPEG, or should you even buy a preset? That's a good one.